All right, welcome everybody. All right, microphone's working. Welcome to everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. So for this video here today, I'm really making it for somebody on YouTube who have made a YouTube short. This gentleman, and he was talking about how he no longer believes in a pre-trib rapture, and he had his own nice little verse, um, couple verses that he was linking together and showing act as proof. So, that's great. That's wonderful. It's good to see a lot of other people, wise up and realize that a lot of these Christian beliefs are unfortunately mythical and unbiblical. What I want to do here today, I told that gentleman, I said, come to my channel, check out my videos. I talk about that topic. But then I felt bad because afterwards I went back to my channel, this one, on my other channel, I have videos for that topic, but it's not easy to find. So I thought, let me make a video that's like literally about this in hopes that that gentleman could find this video, but also in hopes that it can benefit everybody else. So this video is really for that person, but it's for everybody. It will suit everybody. So anyways, for this topic here, the pre-trib rapture. Now, I don't know the true percentage, but I would say a good majority of Christians, probably over 50%, believe in a pre-trib rapture. I'm not going to name which, I can't even remember anymore, which denominations believe it. I just know roughly that a lot of Christians believe it. Okay? And each might have their own little tiny variants or variations, but generally, what they all believe is that they were the redeemed, the church teach their own, but that the good will be redeemed off the earth before any bad stuff happens. Okay? And that's basically it, summed up. So the takeaway from it is that these people who believe that, they don't think that they're going to go through anything bad on the earth. They're going to be spared from all this wrath. And there's typical verses that they always tout. There's one I didn't even bother bringing up for this video. There's no real need. The evidence that I have is so good I don't need to bring up these little verses. But they have verses where it says things like, God didn't appoint us to wrath because of love or whatever, right? That's all fine and dandy. But I mean, you could apply that in a million ways. I mean, the verses I'm going to bring here today are pretty direct to the point. Nobody in their right mind could deny it. Okay, these are ultimate proofs that pre-trib rapture is false and not biblical as a doctrine. Okay, so there are, and I'm going to save it for the end so as not to confuse people, but there is something mentioned in Revelation 3 and Revelation 18 that I've talked about for years. It's nothing new, but I'll save that for the end because those verses have also given people the idea that there is a pre-trib rapture. I don't blame them so much for thinking that from Revelation 3 and Revelation 18. Let's save that for the end first. Let me logically prove that there is no pre-tribulation rapture. That's the key thing. It's not really, but it kind of is a play on words, because if you want to talk about a pre-trib rapture, it's not really what they coin it as, the exact words that matter. It's what they believe it to be. And they believe the pre-trib rapture theory that it encompasses that the good will be redeemed off the earth before anything bad happens. So that's the important takeaway. So the verses I will show now show that that is not the case. Okay, it is simply not the case. And a lot of these verses are spoken from Jesus's own mouth. So it's pretty undeniable. Okay, and then after I lay this foundation, where we can see that the tribulation is that the rapture is post-tribulation, not pre, then I can get into what it says in Revelation 3 and Revelation 18, because there is a pre-rapture, but it doesn't occur that long off before the great and final rapture, but it does spare people from some of the big bad events. But it would not be true to say that that qualifies as a pre-trib rapture, because they will still be here for the 3.5 years of tribulation and then the starting events, as I'll show the first, all of the trumpets. And in actuality, it'll be virtually everything that they will have to go through, but they could be spared. Some people will be spared some of the worst things towards the end. Okay? But before I get to that, let me lay down the foundation on how there is no pre-tribulation rapture. Okay? So the best way to prove it is the following verses. If we go over here to 1 Corinthians 15:52, okay, it'll lay down a little factoid for us. It says, "In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, in the last trumpet, for it shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed." This is telling us that when the last trumpet sounds, the resurrection will occur. Okay? And we know as Christians, and I will have the verses to prove it, that the resurrection occurs when Jesus arrives. So this is where you start piecing the things together like a puzzle or like algebra, however you want to put it, but you start connecting the dots. Okay? So we are told that at the last trumpet, when it sounds, the dead will be raised incorruptible. So we know that the resurrection will occur at the time of the last trumpet. And it also says, "And we shall be changed." So we know that the resurrection and the translation, okay, occurs at the time of the last trumpet, which is the seventh trumpet. Okay, this is also confirmed here in 1 Thessalonians 4:16. Okay, like a second witness. It says, "Because the Lord himself, in a shout, in the voice of a chief messenger," so that would be the seventh, the final, "and in the trumpet of God, shall come down from heaven, and the dead in Christ shall rise first." Oh, sorry, I should have read from verse, which one should I do? Verse 15. No, I'll read from verse 14. So, "For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, so also God those asleep through Jesus he will bring with him. For this to you we say in the word of the Lord, that we who are living, who do remain over to the presence of the Lord, may not precede those asleep." So this means that the people who are alive, who are going to be translated and subsequently raptured, that we cannot go up before the resurrected go up. We will not precede those who are asleep. Okay, and then verse 16, "Because the Lord himself in a shout, in the voice of a chief messenger, and in the trumpet of God shall come down from heaven, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we who are living, who are remaining over, together with them shall be caught away in the clouds to meet the Lord in air." Okay, that's the rapture. So that is logically shown us, the two starting verses here, that it's at the time of the final trumpet, when Jesus arrives, that the resurrection will occur, and it will occur first before we are maybe we start translating while the resurrection is occurring. The point is that we who are going to be translated do not precede those who are resurrecting. So when the seventh trumpet happens and Jesus arrives, the resurrection occurs, the living get translated, and then the resurrected and the translated go up together in the rapture together. Okay, this is what has been established. Now, if we go over to Revelation 11, it confirms this again, like a third witness, right? If we go to verse 15, it actually mentions the description of the seventh trumpet. Okay, the trumpets were talked about in like chapter 8, I think it was, chapter 8 and 9. This is all the way further in Revelation 11, but this is where it says the seventh trumpet sounds. Verse 15, "And the seventh messenger did sound." Okay, so there you go. What happens in literally the verses just before that? So at the time of the seventh trumpet, what does it say happens? It says in verse 11, "After the 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God did enter into them, the two witnesses who were killed and lay dead for a few days. The spirit of God, the spirit of life from God did enter into them, and they stood upon their feet." This is the resurrection. "And a great fear fell upon those beholding them. And they heard a great voice out of the heaven saying to them, Come up hither. And they went up to the heaven in the cloud, and their enemies beheld them." Okay? So that is exactly what was spoken about in the other verses. So this is a threefold confirmation of the basic order of events. Okay, we know that Jesus will arrive, the seventh trumpet will sound, the resurrection will occur, the translation will occur, and then the resurrected and translated will ascend up together. But what does this show you? It shows you that we all who are going to be raptured have to wait for the seventh trumpet. That's the beauty of logic. We have to wait to the seventh trumpet. Okay? We have to. So we're going to be here for number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we have to wait for the 7th. So we're basically here for the whole shebang. So even at the end of the video, when I get into Revelation 3 and Revelation 18, where it says that a select group will be taken up out and spared from some of the wrath, that's only like the big bad things right at the very, very end. So like, yeah, some people will be spared from that. I like to think, as I always said, that, it's probably the elderly, the very young, like babies or young defenseless children, the disabled, mentally or physically disabled, or handicapped, whatever the right words are nowadays. I don't know what makes everybody happy anymore, right? But you know what I mean? People who are in need. I think it would make more sense and be more fair, whatever. I'm not trying to judge anything, that they would be taken first. I mean, more than fully able-bodied and minded people who could fend for themselves. You know what I mean? I would like to think that, the elderly people who are in the resting homes, or paralyzed people in the hospital, or people in comas, and various people who are in need, you know what I mean, that they would be taken up first. And I think if you're not being selfish, you would agree, you know what I mean? But nonetheless, it doesn't say that. So that's just my idea. But Revelation 3 and Revelation 18 are about a select group of people, and they only get spared from the biggest and worst stuff right at the very, very end. Let's not worry about that right now. We're talking about the concept of a pre-tribulation rapture. Well, in Revelation 11 that I just read from, before it gets to the 7th trumpet sounding, it says that the 2 witnesses would plague the earth for 3.5 years with all these plagues from God. Okay, it says here, where is it? They have the authority to shut the heaven, that it may not rain in the days of their prophecy, and authority they have over the waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the land with every plague as often as they may will. And when they may finish their testimony, the beast, Satan, that is coming up out of the abyss, because he was imprisoned in there for 1,000 years, like it says, when he's released, he will come up, kill those 2 witnesses. Okay, but it says, when he's the beast that is coming up out of the abyss shall make war with them, overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies are upon the broad place of the city that is called spiritually Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified, which is Jerusalem, Israel. Okay, and then bam, you get into the verses where they then resurrect. 3 or 3.5 days later, right? So that period of 3.5 years is literally where God has commissioned the earth to be smitten and plagued for 3.5 solid years. You don't get that anywhere else in the Bible. Like, that is the end days stuff that occurs. God is plaguing the earth for 3.5 years. He doesn't say 7 years. Okay, I'm not here to talk about whether it's 3.5 or 7. So maybe I shouldn't get into that. So, but it says that they'll be plagued for 3.5 years. But the key thing for this video is that at the end of the 3.5 years is the resurrection, the translation of the rapture, and the 7th trumpet, hence the arrival of Christ. Because we know when Jesus arrives, the 7th trumpet sounds and the dead in Christ rise, right? So we know, follow the logic, that after the tribulation that God said he would give verbatim, that after that 3.5 year tribulation, then the rapture would occur. That is what's blatantly said in the verses that I just read. So nobody can say that the rapture is a pre-tribulation rapture. That is not true. There is no rapture that is going to take place before the 3.5 years. No, sorry, it's not going to happen. Okay, the rapture, the one and only grand rapture, okay, the so-called grand rapture, let me put it that way, which represents the nearly everybody who's resurrected and translated, who's going to go up, like that grand rapture, that occurs on the so-called final day when the 7th trumpet is blaring. Okay, it does not occur before then. So the rapture occurs then. Okay, now their theory of a pre-tribulation rapture is still incorrect, even if they want to say, well, didn't you just say Revelation 3 and Revelation 18 talk about an earlier rapture as well, like a smaller or an earlier rapture of a certain group of people? Yes, that's true. But no matter what, the point is that that's after all the bad stuff is happening. Yeah, it saves those people from some further bad stuff, but it's after the 3.5 years of tribulation. And it's after the first like 5 or 6 trumpets or whatever. Like, I can't remember offhand. It's in my book and in my study videos and all of that. I can't remember exactly when, but the point is, it's not pre-tribulation. Okay, it's not pre-tribulation. We can see from all of the verses that I have yet to read as well, it further concretes that we're going to be here up until the 7th trumpet. And that means the 5th and the 6th trumpet and all the other ones where there's demons and fallen angels running around. Okay, so here's a little bit of proof for that. If we go to Revelation 9, this is the 5th trumpet. So we know we have to wait till the 7th. This is just the 5th right here. So not only this, but we had the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th trumpets already go off. Not to mention seals and vials going off. That's a whole other topic for another day, right? I'm just here to focus on something simple for now, right? But they do connect together. But I talk about that in my book and elsewhere, right? I have a whole chapter on that in my book. It's pretty good, right? Show all the connections between trumpet, seals, and vials. But anyways, sparing that from this video, keeping things simple. 5th trumpet, okay? The fifth messenger did sound. That's verse 1, okay? It says right here, okay, the earth goes dark. Actually, well, that's important, right? The earth goes dark right here in verse 2, right? Darkened was the sun and the air from the smoke of the pit, okay? We're going to hear that later in Matthew 24, which is paralleled elsewhere in the Gospels, like Luke and Mark, where Jesus says how we're going to have all these tribulations, and then after the tribulations, okay, actually, I'll read that verse now. So, Matthew 24, it says, we got to go down to verse 29. This is Jesus speaking. He says, and immediately after the tribulation of those days, and it doesn't even matter what he said before that, right? But he went on for paragraphs about all these tribulations and bad things that are going to happen on the earth. Wars, the earthquakes, disasters, all sorts of things, right? And after all of those paragraphs, then he says, and immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. We just heard that in Revelation 9, like I said, right? The sun will be darkened. The moon won't give her light. The stars will fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in the heaven. So this is the arrival of Jesus, right? We know that the sun darkening is the 5th trumpet, okay? At the 6th trumpet, we just have fallen angels and monsters released, right? But then at the 7th trumpet, the resurrection and all of those other things, right? The arrival of Jesus. So it says right here, then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in the heaven. Then all the tribes of the earth shall smite the breast, and they'll see the Son of Man coming upon the clouds of heaven with power and much glory. And he will send his messengers with a great sound of a trumpet. So this is concreting it all in. That's going to be the 7th trumpet. And they shall gather together as chosen from the 4 winds. This is the gathering that precedes the rapture. So this is telling you that the rapture is after this. Okay, it's just concreting in. It's at the end. It's at the 7th trumpet. Okay, so this is just further confirmation, right? And Jesus is saying this. This is Matthew 24, that after the tribulation of those days, so post-tribulation, but there's still tribulations happening, so it's not really true to say that. But, right, you see my point there. After the tribulation of those days is when all this will happen. He'll send his messengers out. They'll gather together as chosen from the 4 winds, from the ends of the heavens unto the ends thereof. Okay? And it's at the start of the chapter is when the disciples, in case you didn't know, right? Verse 3, Jesus is sitting on the Mount of the Olives, and the disciples came near to him by himself, saying, tell us, when shall these be, and what is the sign of thy presence, his arrival, and of the full end of the age? And then Jesus goes on for that whole chapter, blah, 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 all these things, all these things, all these things. And that's where you get down to verse 29, and immediately after the tribulation of those days. So the rapture definitely happens after tribulations, after a vast or, a period of intense tribulations. There's no denying it. We've just read all these verses that confirm it. So just these factoids alone show you that the pre-tribulation theory is not valid. It's just not valid, okay? Even though there is the Revelation 3 and Revelation 18 comments, which I'll get to last, despite that, those things do not occur before. Like the rapture occurs after, okay? So let's go on to the next verse. So where was I? So in Revelation 9, this is another important point. So the sun has gone darkened. The Revelation 9:1, the trumpet is just blown, the 5th trumpet, right? Then you get these monsters released, but God and the angels speak to the monsters, these demons or whatever they are. And it says in verse 5, and it was given to them that they may not kill them, but that they, sorry, not that verse, verse 4, and it was said to them that they may not injure the grass of the earth, which means mankind, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but the men only who have not the seal of God upon their foreheads. If the people of God had been raptured off the earth before any of these dark, spooky things were happening, why would this be said? This is said because the people of God who are going to be raptured away are still here. So we are definitely still here when the earth goes into darkness, when the monsters are released. We're definitely still here. Okay? I can't remember exactly what it was in my book. I have a book on 2023, 2024 rapture and end days and all of that. And I have a good little chapter on Revelations and showing the trumpet, seals, and vials and how they all connect, showing the verses and, showing you, yeah, they do definitely connect and all that. Offhand, I can't remember exactly where this early rapture might happen, but it could happen around the time of the sixth trumpet. So it's possible. It's possible, and this is just offhand, because I can remember offhand, right? But it's possible that the early rapture, which is probably a smaller group, just logical, right? That's going to probably occur around this point. Now, this would make kind of logical sense because at this point here, we're talking about fallen angels being released, okay, and these demonic beings that go off to kill a third of mankind. These are going to be pretty horrific times, okay? And if you think about it, all the disabled people, elderly people, little children, and this and that there, it's bad enough they had to endure everything up to this point. At least spare them this. You know what I mean? So it might be at this point here when that early little rapture occurs. That could be backed up by what it just said in the verses before, that they're not allowed to injure any grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only the men who have not the seal of God. This is signifying logically that at this point of the fifth trumpet, that the sealing is starting. So even though all this big, bad, spooky stuff is happening, we're all the way up to the fifth trumpet, the people of God are still on earth, and the sealing is happening around the time of the fifth trumpet, based on what is just said there. And like I said, just offhand, off memory, I can't remember exactly what's in my book. I don't have my own physical copy yet, right? So I'd have to buy one and order one. Then I can quote it. But offhand is probably around this point here. So after the fifth, and right at around the sixth trumpet, just before the seventh. But I mean, all these events are taking place in one day. I have another great video where there's overwhelming evidence that all these things actually take place in an hour, right? But putting that argument aside, they're all taking place in a day. So you're not really going to be spared that much time, but you could be spared a lot of grief and suffering and terrible things that you might see. Okay. And that's why I just think it makes more sense that God will probably take out those in most need and spare them from the worst, most monstrous, most terrible things that would transpire. But anyways, I can't necessarily prove that right here and now. But anyways, what it does show us is that the people of God will be here for the fifth trumpet. They'll definitely be here logically for the sixth trumpet, because we have to be here for the seventh trumpet when Jesus arrives for the resurrection to occur, because we will not precede those who are resurrecting. So we are going to be here for all this stuff. And this is also confirmed in Revelation 7, where it says that in similar fashion, it's talking to these, messengers and beings are going around punishing and, all the bad stuff happened to mankind. It says, do not injure the land, nor the sea, nor the trees, till we may seal the servants of our God upon their foreheads. Okay, so the same thing that was just said in Revelation 9, so showing you this pattern of this concept that is actually taking place, that the people of God are going to be on earth. This is logical. We don't need to fuss over little tiny things and timing of things. Let's just look at the logic. Those two statements show you that the people of God are going to be here when bad stuff is happening. Okay, so pre-tribulation is invalid. We're going to be here for all this stuff. Okay, now next, this is important also to understand. Jesus himself said in Matthew 24 that it'll be like the days of Noah. Okay, this is said in Matthew 24. It's said in Luke 17, and also in 1 Peter 3, verse 20. Okay, so it's alluded to all these times that at the end days, before the sudden and unknown arrival of Jesus, that it'll be like the days of Noah. Now, not only that, but in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3, it says, where is it? Well, verse 1, and concerning the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need of my writing to you, for yourselves have known thoroughly that the day of the Lord as a thief in the night does so come. For when they may say peace and surety, then sudden destruction does stand by them, as the travail does her who is with child, and they shall not escape. And ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day may catch you as a thief. I've talked about that little interesting catch at the end there, but I won't get into that interesting aspect for this video because that's a whole nother topic, but it's very, very interesting. But for focusing on this video, it says here that we're warned that people will be having a normal life. Not everybody, but it'll be like normal life, like normal lifetime, normal times. Peace and surety, everybody will be thinking and saying. That makes sense when you go and look at the statements in Matthew 24 and Luke 17, where Jesus says it'll be like the days of Noah. People will be eating, drinking, marrying, doing all their normally things till the day Noah entered into the ark, okay, and then everything was destroyed, okay? They're eating, they're drinking, they're marrying, they're given in marriage till the day that Noah entered into the ark and the deluge came and destroyed all. Okay, Luke 17:27. In like manner also, as it came to pass in the days of Lot. So he also compares it to Sodom and Gomorrah. In like fashion, the people there were doing what they were normally doing. It was their daily lives. And then sudden destruction came, fiery rocks from heaven, which is the exact same way that the earth is going to be destroyed this time. So in like manner also, as it came to pass in the days of Lot, they were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, they were building. And on the day Lot went forth from Sodom, he rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed all. According to these things it shall be in the day the Son of Man is revealed. So this is what Jesus has said. Okay, people are going to be blissfully unawares. It's going to be like, depending where you live, like everyday normal life, and you're going to feel like peace and surety, and then bam, sudden destruction. Okay, so all this talk of a pre-trib rapture, that's not going to happen. Okay, we're going to have the 3.5 years where all these disasters, natural disasters, plagues, and all that will have been unleashed. I think they've already occurred. They're wrapping up this year, but let's not get into what I believe, right? But we're going to have those 3.5 final years of disasters and plagues, like Revelation 11 said. Then when that ends, you're at that final 3.5 day countdown where the two witnesses stay dead because they just got killed by Satan and got released. Okay, and then after those 3.5 days is Jesus arrives, seventh trumpet blares, the resurrection occurs. All those events of Revelation, the first, second, third trump, all the trumpet seals and vials are all occurring on that final day. I proved that in many other videos. I proved that in the book, right? And in fact, most or all of it in 1 hour, but let's not go there, right? It's all in one day. So the world's going to be, the evil side of the world is going to be celebrating that the two witnesses are dead, that their Lord Satan killed them. So for 3 days, they're going to be celebrating like Sodom and Gomorrah were, right? The rest of the world's just going to be the average person, but oblivious like the days of Noah, right? So that's, like basically why those two comparisons were given. Jesus is the one saying, and he says, according to these things, it's going to be like for you in the end days, right? So, this concept of a pre-tribulation rapture does not map out. Jesus, I mean, the verses where Jesus says this about the days of Noah is from Matthew 24 and Luke 17, the very same places where he said, after the tribulation of those days, I will arrive and rapture everybody. So my point is proven. Okay, this locks it in, concretes it in, that there is no such thing biblically as a, sorry if I've been shaking the screen. There's no such thing biblically as a pre-tribulation rapture. Let me just make sure I read all these verses here. And okay. Yeah, see before Matthew 24:29, he says in Matthew 24:21, for there then shall be great tribulation, such as was not from the beginning of the world to now, nor may be. Then it's later, it's the verse that I already read, verse 29, and immediately after the tribulation of those days, he's going to arrive and the resurrection and the rapture will occur. So, I mean, there's no grounds to say the rapture is pre-tribulation, right? And then also these other statements that are made in the New Testament and even by Jesus make more sense. It says in Matthew 10, he who has endured to the end, he shall be saved. Matthew 24, same place I was just reading from, but he who did endure to the end, he shall be saved. In Mark 13:13, ye shall be hated by all because of my name, but he who has endured to the end, he shall be saved. You know, what about all these churches that say God doesn't appoint us to wrath? There's tons of places where Jesus says we're going to suffer and suffer for his sake. He just said you're going to be hated by all because of my name. But, you know, we have these churches saying we're going to be taken away so we don't go through anything bad, so we don't have to go through any wrath, so we don't have to go through any tribulation. That's just simply not true, right? But ye shall be hated by all because of my name, but he who has endured to the end, he shall be saved. So, you know, part of the requirement, you could argue, of being saved is you have to endure to the end, right? There's a red bird outside that wants to be fed. Oh man, I feel bad. Should go feed it. I'm almost finished though. Where else? I think there's a few more of these, but neither case, right? The point is proven. So that's all I really need to do for this video. I know for a fact I've gone on too long, so it's around 30 minutes. That's good enough. Okay, so I think I proved it well enough there. Quick synopsis, right? We were told all those verses that show that the rapture occurs after the resurrection and translation. Okay, we're told that we who are translated in rapture do not precede those who resurrect. We're told that resurrection, translation, and rapture occur at the time of the seventh trumpet. We're told that Jesus arrives at the time of the seventh trumpet. So when Jesus arrives with the seventh trumpet, the resurrection occurs. We who are alive are translated, and then we are raptured up together. This is the logical order of events. This occurs at the seventh trumpet, which means all of the trumpets and all of the seals and vials have occurred. It's at the very, very end of all things. So that's when the grand so-called one and only rapture occurs. The rapture that applies by default to all mankind. Now, God did say, for whatever reason, in Revelation 3 and Revelation 18, so I'll read it now, right? But this offer is not extended to everybody. This offer is only extended to one of the assemblies. And I think these assemblies are, in a sense, arbitrary, not fully arbitrary, but because they're not named specifically. They are given names, but the names are arbitrary. But let's not have a wordplay game here, right? But what he describes about the assemblies, I think what it does is it arbitrarily segments all of end days Christianity with all its complex denominations. It tries to simplify it somewhat arbitrarily into 7 categories, 7 assemblies that are uniquely different from one another the other. That's what I think makes the most logical sense. Okay, they are clearly end days churches because of all the edicts and warnings given to them. Talk about Jesus threatening them: if you don't reform, I will come against you when I come at my coming, the second coming, and I will fight against you. They're definitely edicts to the end days churches. Okay, those 7 churches did exist in ancient times, but they stopped existing after a few centuries or whatever. They don't exist anymore, and nothing is known about them, right? So it is logically and directly about end days assemblies. Okay, so in that sense, they're not literally the 7 categories of Christianity, but in some sense, they represent 7 unique assemblies of Christians. Only one of the 7 isn't rebuked. All of the others are rebuked to some extent, some terribly rebuked. Only one is not rebuked, and this one is the so-called Assembly of Philadelphia. And what he says to them is as follows. So this is probably the assembly who gets it right. He says, because thou did keep the word of my endurance, I will also keep you from the hour. So again, I didn't get into how it occurs in an hour because I have other videos on that, right? But believe it or not, these events will occur in an hour on the final day, right? But I'm not going to argue about that here. But this is one of the verses that actually support that, right? So it says, because you did keep the word of my endurance, I will keep thee from the hour of the trial that is about to come upon all the world to try those dwelling upon the earth. So, and in Revelation 18, in similar manner, he says something similar. He doesn't specify the Assembly of Philadelphia, but he does say in verse 4, and I heard another voice out of the heavens saying, come forth out of her, my people, that ye may not partake with her sins, and that ye may not receive of her plagues. So while that does not directly in Revelation 18 really directly prove a rapture. I mean, you could argue from both sides and just say that, it's just a poetic reference, like generally speaking, God will be rapturing us out of the earth. And while all of this world and the evilness is being destroyed, so that statement just made is still valid in that sense, irregardless of an early rapture context. You know what I mean? Just general, it still applies. So let's not fuss over it too much. We could fuss over Revelation 3, because that's a little bit more direct, right? So let's just keep things simple for this video. So in Revelation 3, it does appear to suggest that people will be spared at least some of the events. It says they'll be spared an hour. Okay. Now, if all the events take place in an hour, I can't remember exactly what I had in my book offhand. I don't have a physical copy, right? I put all my hard work into the book, but and plus these things to me don't really matter. I am not a stellar person. I expect to probably just make it, if I'm lucky enough to make it on the final day. I'm just hoping I can change and become better, right? So I don't expect to be whisked away and all that there. I'm pleading that I don't get condemned, right? That's my category. That's why I'm not so fussed about these little, oh, am I going to go in the pre-rapture? You know what I mean? I'd rather that the needy and the disabled and the elderly and the young go in a pre-rapture, if anything. And if they get taken out of here before all the big nasty events, good, right? But if you're talking about a group of special people getting taken out of here, well, the rapture occurs at the very end, at the seventh trumpet, right? So if anybody's going out of here early, according to Revelation 3, it cannot be the vast majority. It's got to be, this is the logic, it's got to be a small group, a minority. Because why would you have all the rest of the framework and the Revelation laying down that the rapture occurs at the seventh trumpet and in the New Testament? Why would it have that? So it's obviously, and because it specifies it's an assembly that obviously didn't get rebuked. So it's the one assembly who got it right. Okay. But I still kind of arrogantly would rather believe God's going to take out the elderly, disabled, the injured, the paralyzed. You know what I mean? I still rather that than him just take out people who theologically got it right or were the most righteous. You know what I mean? But I'm not God. He calls the shots, right? And my opinion doesn't matter here anyways. His opinion is better. So it is what it is, right? But if any early rapture is going to occur, okay, you're only going to be spared 1 hour, according to what it says in the verse that enlightens you about that concept. You're going to be spared 1 hour. Maybe that hour will encompass all the events from first trumpet, seal, and vial all the way up to the end. Maybe it does. Good for you. And if you're on that first bit out of here, good for you. I'm not going to gripe and be jealous. You know what I mean? If it is, that's what it is. Otherwise, what are the options? Well, if it's an early rapture, it can't be early if it takes place at the same time as the grand rapture, which is at the seventh trumpet. So, logic, if it's early, hey, maybe it takes place around the time of the fifth and sixth trumpet. My verification for that reasoning was, like I said earlier, that in Revelation 9 and 7, it talks about, hey, big bad guys, hold on a second here. We got to seal the chosen on their foreheads. Gee, those are the people who are going to get raptured. So that kind of shows you that people who are going to be raptured, whether pre-rapture or the grand rapture, we don't know who, but people who are going to be raptured are still here at the time of the fifth and sixth trumpet. So it's one of the two, right? Maybe I pinpointed it in my book. I can't remember offhand. Maybe I did all that already, and I just can't remember exactly what the little step is. But for me personally, I don't really care that much. But I've proven what I want to prove for this video, that the pre-tribulation rapture is not true. It directly contradicts what Jesus himself said and all the other verses I covered. So that's it for this video. I'm not going over 40 minutes. God bless you all. Everybody take care. Try to teach your churches this. Try to teach your pastors and fellow Christians this, right? Because people need to wake up out of this funk. If you're, like the days of Noah or like the days of Sodom, just oblivious to everything, and it's just going to catch you by surprise. Like the last 3.5 years, natural disasters and everything have gotten more dangerous, higher magnitudes, and more frequent. We had that what disease going around the world for this entire period. How could anybody say that the things didn't get worse and the plagues and disasters over these last 3.5 years? You know what I mean? Nobody in their right mind could say that it didn't get worse. You know what I mean? So if you've been oblivious to how much worse it's got, and then suddenly the end does arrive, those verses Jesus said will come true. Be like the days of Noah, be like the days of Sodom. They will be saying peace and charity, and then bam, sudden destruction. And they'll just have absolutely no clue because they're waiting to get taken out of here pre-tribulation, but that's not biblical. They're going to be here when all these big bad things start happening. Okay, so you got to buckle down and get ready in case you're stuck here when all the monsters and fallen angels are running around. Don't give up your faith because your church is teaching you pre-tribulation rapture. You know what I mean? If those things are happening, remember what I taught today from Revelation 9, that it says that the people of God will still be here when those monsters and such are running around, and that's the time when we're being sealed, right? But these churches will have you thinking, oh, no, 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 only the forsaken are going to be here during those times. But it's because they don't know their Bibles well enough. Anyways, take care, folks.